So welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with Roko, Michelle, and our very special guest, Frank Kahn. Frank is, got a frog in my throat, I'm going to read it. The Regional Clinical Program Manager for High Reliability Organization at Providence Health.
That's right.
We all met and worked together at Sutter Health, and Frank did that job there as well.
Yes.
And so he's been the safety guy forever. And so I'm super excited to have him on. The topic is going to be on the power of diversity. And so with that, I want to kick us off with a quote. There were a number of them, by the way. And so I know, Frank, you've got one too as well. So one of them that stood out for me is diversity, the art of thinking independently together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know there's, and Roko and I kind of talked about, there's so many different definitions or the way that we can incorporate or think about diversity, especially today's world. But the thing that we talked about, and I know, Frank, you and I talked about, was diversity in perspectives and opinions. And for me, my experience has been when we bring people in that don't think like us or have the same perspective or not the same strengths or skill sets, then the project or the work that we're doing, it's like leapfrogs that accelerates our ability to create better, faster, more. I know that's been my experience. And so I look forward to people who don't think like me.
Yeah.
But I don't know that everyone feels that way. So what are your thoughts?
You know, that's a really, first of all, thanks for sharing that quote. It kind of resonates with me. And this is why I think I love patient safety, because everyone can get behind that. No one comes to or gets into healthcare to want to harm people, but yet the vast majority of folks that get into this work are sometimes not aware of the fact that harm or mistakes actually happens in healthcare. In fact, in 2016, that study that came out in the British Medical Journal, 250,000 deaths a year occur from medical error, putting it just behind heart disease and cancer. And so it almost starts there by just kind of raising that awareness. And then when people realize, like, oh my gosh, this is a thing, does that happen here? And when they realize that it happens within their own organization, then all of a sudden people can really get behind that and behind the change and figure out, well, what do I do? How do I contribute to the potential harm that happens within our organization? It doesn't matter if you're clinical, non-clinical, HR, IT, we all contribute to patient safety in some way. So
it's interesting. I know you have, I'll let you go, Roko, because I had a thought that came up. I see you. You're like, okay, let me go in.
No, I just loved what he said. It totally resonated with me because, like, you know, I always say I have my lean hat on. I can't take it off. But as you were talking, it's when you have people in a team that think alike, you stop challenging status quo. You don't see the potential risks that your processes may create or that the environment is creating because you're so used to seeing them. And if everybody sees them in the same way, there's no challenge. And to me, that's what diversity does, is it helps us to challenge our thinking and take a veer to the right. Oh, look at that. You're right. I never noticed that before, or I haven't noticed that in that way or heard it that way. So it gets, and that's one of the tenets, one of the key principles of lean is to challenge.
And you know what I like about what you said there is that, you know, there's a lot of tools and structures within lean that I know that we try to employ, like in the clinical settings, and sometimes it could be met with resistance, like, oh, how is that really gonna help me? But then when you actually show them and actually get them involved in actually applying those lean concepts to improving clinical processes, and then they see the benefit and the outcome, like that's really when well, the magic with my background, when the magic happens. And that's what I live. That's what I live for. You know, it's just, I love it when I work with folks that are resistant to that change at first, but then when you just, over time, just continuously working with them and showing them the value of this work, and then actually showing the results of it, it's inspiring for me. And then they become the champions themselves and spread it locally. And so that's really how you get spread and sustainment using some of those principles.
Yeah.
You know, it's I'm going to go back to the different perspectives and I'm going to say outside eyes, because when we did improvement events, we brought in outside eyes, right? And outside eyes are the people that don't know the process. They're not familiar with it. They're not the ones that get into this, you know, we've always done it this way mode. And it's not a negative reflection on the people who are doing the job. But you're so busy doing the job, you know, you have to be intentional about doing something differently. And I remember one of the events we had in surgical services, we were following the surgical scrub, the scrub tech around. And at this particular point, they were loading case cards. And so one of the outside eyes people that was not a scrub tech loading case card, you know, setting up case cards for surgery, is like, well, why do you do it this way? And he paused and he's like, because we always
done it this way.
Yeah, because it was so inefficient. And so I remember one of the reflections when we were done with a Kaizen event, and he said, my God, I've been doing this job for 25 years and I learned stuff from someone who had never done this job before. But I think that's one of the values when you talk about diversity, is those different perspectives, and people have not walked in your shoes. That can share a different perspective and ask those simple questions. What's your thinking behind this? Why do you do it this way? It is powerful.
Yeah. And, you know, you reminded me of a quote that I absolutely love and live by. It's by Peter Drucker, that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes.
What you just described right there is just culture. This is just the way we've always done it. And you know, culture change is hard work. It's a marathon, you know, to use a cliche, but it's true. And sometimes people get frustrated when the change or the improvements aren't right away. But that's where, you know, high reliability comes in. It just really helps people understand that, you know, when you look at like these run charts and you see the change, you'll see this normal variation, and it just takes time. But you know, I get it. Sometimes with clinical outcomes, you know, you want to see that change immediately, especially when you have issues with like falls, for example, medication errors. Sometimes those things can't wait. You know, we want to figure out what's going on right now. And you know, fortunately, there are some tools in high reliability that can help with that. But then it takes the change agents, you know, those cultural leaders, to really reinforce the fact that what we're doing takes time, and it's all about those small victories.
You know, it was funny. It came to me, Roko, and I think we talked about another podcast, was the example you talk about medication errors and stuff. There was a leader that I coached in another healthcare organization. Of course, we have several that have been represented, right? And there were these medication error things that she had heard about from pharmacy. So she's clinical director. All this stuff happening. And finally, it was almost like, I've had enough. I've had enough of you basically pinging me and telling me my nurses are screwing up, that kind of thing. And I'm paraphrasing, those aren't her words. So she went to the pharmacy, and they were going to go to Gemba. They were going to go where things were happening to observe what was going on. And she said she got there, and the pharmacy had set up just a little station on what it looked like to scan these medications, because that's where the errors were. And she's like, okay, so we don't have to go out to the floor. We'll just do it here. And so she watches, and they scan this barcode, and she looks at it and she says, what's that other barcode? And they go, well, no, that's just one. That's not the right one. It's this one. And she said, but how do people know that that's not the right one? Because the pharmacist knew it, but they've been trying to get that other barcode that's not the barcode they should be scanning removed. And so she's like, can we just do something right now? Can we do a line through this other barcodes and just scan? So just that simple thing of her going, diversity, different perspectives. She's not from pharmacy, right? She's clinical manager, observing what's going on. They made a change. I don't know if they put a label over the other barcode, whatever it was. But just in a couple weeks' time, those medication errors just plummeted.
That's awesome.
And it had been that way for years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's that kind of stuff that literally overnight you can make a change, because you have some other perspective, that fresh eyes come in, whatever it may be, and someone is asking those curious questions. And I think that's one of the things that diversity brings too, is that we're not doing the group think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Frank, how do you bring that diversity into the teams or the groups that you work with around high reliability, or just in general?
Yeah. So this actually started at Sutter when I was teaming up with the learning innovation team and marketing and developing these educational videos. We had a lot of fun doing it, but it was a way to kind of reinforce and engage everyone around high reliability, because it can be a little complex and difficult to understand sometimes, but these videos made it fun and interesting. And then when I came to this organization here, I just started noticing similar things, where people would take the training, but it's not quite clicking, and they're not really sure how to apply it. So, but then I also noticed something with leadership, in that they're so busy, they have so many things going on, that figuring out ways to engage your staff and incorporate it into their daily work is hard. It's difficult. And then in turn, what I also noticed is that the staff were not all that engaged, because their leaders are kind of setting the tone in a way, but they know high reliability exists and it's out there, but how do we do this work? It's difficult. So I created another set of video blogs for Providence, but this time what I did is I focused on the staff that are actually doing the work, as opposed to highlighting the leaders. The leaders are in it, but this time it's the staff, because I wanted people to see the great work that's already happening. In this climate right now, we hear about burnout and just how expensive healthcare is. Just like a lot of negativity out there, but there's a lot of positive going on too. And so my focus with these videos is to highlight the good work that these staff members are doing, tie it to a high reliability concept, and have that be the mechanism by which we're reinforcing the content for not just for staff, but for leaders and doctors as well. But the great part of it too is that I'm giving these staff members a platform and a voice that they don't normally have. Sure, we have programs in place to kind of highlight them and reward them for the great work that they do, but this is deeper than that. It's just giving them the spotlight to share their story, and it's those stories that have the impact. And I've been doing this since March, and now here we are towards the end of the year, and it's still going. Leaders have taken interest in it. I have other caregivers that like, hey, when's your next video? I want to be in it. It's got momentum now, and it's great, because all I want to do is highlight them and show them, like, you guys you're awesome. You're already doing the work, and guess what? It's already highly reliable. You just don't even know it yet, but here you are. So it's been great.
Frank, I love it. In fact, you coming here, me saying, hey, will you be on the podcast, is actually, even though we communicated before, connected, it was because one of those videos, and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't seen one of these in so long. But you're absolutely right. It wasn't just you teaching a concept or reinforcing a concept. It was highlighting the people that were doing the work. And what came to mind for me is you take, and I'm going to pause in a minute, because I want you to explain to people what high reliability is.
Yeah.
Because we've been using that term, and it dawned on me that you take that term and what it means, and you apply it you make it relatable. And so, and I think that's by doing that with the stories, it's all of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute, I'm a nurse. I do that stuff. Is that what that means?
Yeah.
And I think you start connecting with people, all of a sudden these heavy terms with tools become real life things that we can do something with. So if you can explain really quick to people on what high reliability is, that would probably help. And sorry for not mentioning it in the first place.
No. I get this question a lot. Like, what exactly is that? So basically, highly reliable or high reliability organizations are those that operate under very risky and stressful conditions, yet they manage to have very few fatalities or incidents. So examples of that are airline, nuclear power. But the reason why they're so successful is, again, it's because it's ingrained in their culture. Safety is ingrained in their culture. And I mean, before a plane takes off, they're going through their protocol, making sure everything is right before they take off. And so that's what healthcare is striving to become. But it's not just in those. High reliability doesn't just exist in those types of industries. My favorite example is like Starbucks. You know, if you've ever been behind that person that has that really complicated coffee order, right? And then they go up to the register, and what do you see happening, right? You see the person taking the order, like repeating it back, documenting it, and making sure it's correct. And then once it leaves that counter, it then follows, you know, on the ticket line, and you see the person preparing a drink constantly verifying, making sure they're getting it right. And then even before they call out the order, they call out the name, they repeat the order before they give it back to you. It's the same concepts being applied in everyday life. And so it's out there. We just aren't aware of it. So
thank you for that, Frank. I did not realize that Starbucks.
Yeah, see?
And the concept of high reliability organization. Thank you. Because coffee's serious business.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah. And you know, it's funny because I asked people, I was like, why do you think they do that at Starbucks? Right. And I get to say, oh, well, they just don't want to make up their customers angry. I was like, that's true. But for them, it's customer service, and it's repeat business, right? If you get that order wrong consistently, they're not going to come back, right? Well, the same is true for healthcare these days. We're like in a consumer environment now, and sometimes we get just one opportunity to get that medication order correct, right? And depending on the patient, you know, 15 milligrams can sound a lot like 50, right? 50, and that dosage difference can have some deleterious effects on patients. And so sometimes just explaining it in that way, it just dawns on people like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so to your point, making it relatable, even to those that are in non-clinical environments, thinking of ways in which to make it relate to them, that's how you make it stick.
Yeah, I love it. Roko, what are your thoughts?
I'm just so I'm
She's
speechless.
going, yeah.
I love it. I mean, it connects to everything.
Awesome.
You know, you simplified what it means, and that relatable piece is so key. I love that. I haven't heard that yet, and I just love what you said about it. I'm going to start using it. I'm going to steal it. Frank.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I'm here.
Using it.
Yeah, I want to share it. Yeah.
You're going to steal shamelessly.
Yeah.
It's all about Frank.
Michelle's going to ask me at the very end, what's the one thing I must say? Relatable. Make it relatable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. When I go out to my hospitals, I always tell people, I was like, the name is not High Reliability Frank. It's High Reliability Organization. Yes, I am the leader. I'm the change agent. But at the end of the day, it's all of us that has to do this work, moving together. Yeah. And that's going to be slow, but together, that's how we do it.
So Frank, thank you. So Frank, you've been at Providence less than a year, right?
Less than a year.
So don't want to put you on the spot, but what have you noticed about the people in the organization and their understanding of safety or high reliability or their engagement from when you started to now? Yeah.
So, and Roko could probably relate to this. Prescaney has this really cool diagram that I talk about a lot. It's called the virtuous cycle. And in it, I'm going to try to do my best to explain it. You'll see, if you imagine like kind of like a cog, right? These cog wheels, a smaller one being safety and engagement, and they kind of feed into each other. And as long as those two are kind of feeding into each other and kind of running, it then bleeds over into quality, experience, and those outcomes. And this is true that I've seen. This is like my fourth stint in safety, and the same is still true. Everybody believes and understands that safety is important. What varies is the engagement around that. And engagement means different things to different people. But because there's variation, that the way they feed into each other and the way it moves is very slow. So then in turn, we're not seeing the outcomes in quality, experience, and so on and so on. So if safety and engagement are the drivers for high reliability, then that's where the focus needs to lie. So what I'm trying to do here now is safety. Everybody gets it. Engagement is where it's lacking. So I'm really trying to feed that engagement gap so that we can get that momentum going and then realize the benefits of this work.
You know, it came to mind for me when you were talking about engagement, and I don't know that I've ever thought about it this way before. And it could be the visual of the cogs and the gears.
Right.
Is engagement is actually action.
Sure. Yeah.
And so are you a bystander of this thing called safety, or are you actually taking action with this thing called safety?
Mm-hmm. So I'm a bystander in the sense that I don't provide the care to patients. I mean, that's the our caregivers, but I take action in the sense that I want to show people that it's actually alive and it's happening right now. And again, that's where the videos come in. So I produce at least one video a month. And I'm very intentional in the topics that I choose because I try to link it to some kind of safety initiative. So probably the one that got the most views and currently is the one around catheter-associated urinary tract infections, and how I link that to operating as a team, teamwork, which is a high reliability principle, and how through teamwork is the way to reduce those infections. So in my next episode, I'm going to be doing an episode on learning boards and linking that to fall prevention. So, and that's what I mean. It's like when you're able to link these high reliability principles to work that they can actually relate to and see it happening, then that's where the magic again happens. And that's where it sticks.
All about magic and Harry Potter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Frank, I have so enjoyed seeing you again and chatting with you. And it's different than being in the hallways outside of an office or chatting. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Question for you is, what do you want people that have tuned into the power of diversity to walk away with? What's one or two things?
Well, I'm going to go to the quote from Adam Grant, and that is, to get real diversity of thought, you need to find the people who genuinely hold different views and invite them into the conversation. And again, just going back to my videos, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm finding those staff members, inviting them to share their stories so that we can all benefit from these different perspectives. And it keeps it fresh, you know, while reinforcing the concepts. And I think that's really what's helping us keep going, because high reliability, as I point out, it's a long journey. And the more we do this, the more I think we'll see some progress.
And it's not sexy.
It's not sexy at all.
No.
At all.
No, but the videos make it fun and engaging. And relatable. Thank you, Roko.
Well, I said it already. Relatable. I think that's the main.
Maybe something changed.
No, and it goes. I think it goes back to the original quote that you shared at the beginning around thinking independently but together. The together piece is the piece for me. It's the engagement. It's that relatability. If you're thinking independently, you're not necessarily bringing it together. And so you've got to think of ways to make it relatable to others so that it is together. And with that, you know, you're challenging perspectives by sharing your own.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my very role is challenging that status quo, because I'm not a nurse, a doctor, or a pharmacist. Usually people in my role are those folks like that. And so the mere fact that I'm not clinical and actually have a business background, like, I just try to incorporate that in so that people can think about this a little bit more broadly, and how it has some downstream effects, not just from in the clinical space. So it's been a pleasure being here. I really, really appreciate. It's such an honor, I have to say.
Thank you. We've enjoyed it. I mean, Roko's from ear to ear.
My cheeks hurt. I've been smiling the whole time.
Awesome, great.
I think the thing for me and all this stuff is take a look at, for people listening and ourselves, a reminder for things that maybe you've been in that status quo place, or it's like we've always done it this way. And if you think about, for instance, safety, high reliability, how many people are out there doing engaging videos to find other mediums to connect with people? But I think it's pull in other perspectives and ask people for feedback, whatever that looks like. And so then we can up our game and you get different perspectives in, because I think that's the answer. It's like, try something that hasn't been tried before. You know, and then take a look at the results that you get. So thank you again.
Thank
Leadership
you.
Soundbites, Roko, Michelle, Frank. And until next time, like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much.